Welcome to the Shadow MPC for Yorkshire, a partnership between Recognition PR, Clive Owen LLP and the York Press. The real MPC from the Bank of England is likely to come under pressure to cut interest rates when it meets later this week. But inflation is running at 4.2%, with the latest figure to be released on Wednesday, and it's not expected to drop. The Food and Drink Federation has upgraded its food and non-alcoholic drink inflation forecast, projecting it could reach 5.7% by December. This is up from its previous forecast of 4.8%. And after 9 months of holding its key interest rate steady, the US Federal Reserve is widely expected to announce a rate cut this week. But cutting interest rates here in the UK risks stoking inflation, and rises in the national living wage and national insurance for employers have led to businesses taking on fewer staff. So how do our members feel about the economic outlook? And is there light at the end of this long tunnel? And what do they want the MPC to do to help their businesses? We've got 6 members, and of course I'm a member as well, so 7 members of different businesses. And I'm going to start with the CBI, Becky Hart. She runs CBI in Yorkshire. Becky, you've got members in all different sectors. What is the consensus of opinion on how the business world is feeling about the economy?
I think that a lot of our members, their experiences seem to sort of chime differently with some of the data that we're seeing. So we just had our regional council round. It took place in Hull on Thursday, and there was quite a sort of subdued, demand is subdued. I think people are still being really challenged by inflation and inflationary pressures. And really problematic, I think, with the impact of the NICs really starting to bite, and then concern about the impact of the Employment Rights Bill. And that is really weighing heavily on investment decisions and investment intentions. And I think because there's also such a long run into the budget as well, it's on the 26th of November, and that is also having its impacts as well, because people are sort of slowing down there, just being really cautious. But yeah, I think the data that we're seeing come through has been a little bit more positive, but it's for certain specific things, whereas I'm seeing overall we're seeing much more sort of subdued, and that's coming through in our surveys. They're flashing amber and red. There's not much green in there at the moment.
You have many more members than Recognition PR has clients, but I think my client base would definitely bear you out, and my own experience in business in the last few months has been a little bit subdued, and businesses always they have to defend their position, and sadly I had to lay a member of staff off, which is very sad, because the person had done nothing wrong. It was the economic circumstances. So Becky, I can see your position. Let's move on to our next speaker. Come back to you later, Becky. Let's have a look at our colleague from Clive Owen. Carl Wright is joining us. The decision of the government to slightly delay the budget is a bit annoying. A budget delayed can be investments denied, I think. What do you think, Carl?
Totally agree, Graham. I think they've pushed it as far as they possibly could. And it certainly suggests that there maybe isn't quite the plan that we're all hoping for as of yet. I think I would echo what Becky's saying, really, in terms of there's very much some nervousness about what's to come, and the delayed budget and some of the rumour mill that's in full swing on that at the minute, with everything from broadening of VAT to wealth taxes to pension rates to who knows what, is certainly weighing on investment. I think just speaking to clients, again, it's probably a similar tale to Becky, in that some of the data we're seeing from our institute suggests that Yorkshire is the most confident region in the country, at confidence measure of plus 11.6, national average minus 4.2, hugely ahead. But when you actually get on the ground and speak to clients, it doesn't really bear out. We're still, again, inflationary pressures is a big one, regulatory demands. We've seen some sectors that are doing okay, doing quite well. Digital and tech, health and life sciences, reporting some really good, strong growth. On the flip side, manufacturing and engineering is really finding it hard. I think it's got the lowest confidence level of any industry nationally. Retail and wholesale also struggling. Some big sort of consumer demand falls in that particular space. And many citing the employer's NI thing as a major drag on their business. Although to end on a slightly more positive note, there's several news outlets briefing this morning that the business rate shake-up that's been touted for many years is potentially finally going to come along, and particularly the removal of the multi-property exclusion for small business rates relief, which would be potentially fantastic news for smaller businesses, particularly retail, wholesale, high street. So watch this space, but unfortunately we've got another few months before we'll find out the answers.
Yeah, I know, it's 3 months away, and it does seem a long time. I've got to say, the last budget was the 30th of October. Just so you're in accountancy, I mean, I delayed my tax by a month. I think I'd probably get a penalty, wouldn't
I don't want to give advice on the call, Graham, but you might want to pay her.
Good, well done. Let's move on to Gary Smith. Gary is joining us from Evelyn, the wealth advisors. Gary, before you plunge into your general narrative, and I know you have a lot to say, I was talking to a client of my firm a few weeks ago, and they were into commercial property, and they funded the commercial property by fractional investments, and individual pension funds took investments in the properties that they were building, and they've seen those pension fund investments just virtually all go on pause, haven't come through. Is there a reason that pension funds aren't being necessarily as active at the moment in their investments?
It's a good question. We still have commercial property activity going through pensions, but the key issue is the change to pensions becoming subject to inheritance tax from April 27. And in the 30th of October budget, the Chancellor indicated that pensions would be responsible for paying their share of the inheritance tax. Now, the problem is a property is not a liquid asset, and the industry pushed back quite aggressively and asked for guidance. What was the pension meant to do if the individual was taking the rent as income, there was no cash in the pension and only a property? And that is probably why there's been a slowdown. There has been a slight tweak to the proposals on pensions and inheritance tax, and it is likely that the estate will be allowed to pay the inheritance tax due on the pension with a credit given to get around that liquidity. So that's why there's probably been a slowdown in commercial properties in pension.
Excellent technical answer. Thank you. Just give us a brief overview, because you advise individuals rather than companies. What's the landscape of people's requests and deciding on advice?
It's quite an interesting day. It's an interesting time. The start of the year, the markets were subdued and fell quite aggressively ahead of President Trump's Liberation Day in April. But since then, the markets are up. The FTSE 100 is doing extremely well, but that's not a barometer of how the UK is performing. America is up, but not as much, purely because the dollar has fallen against sterling. So depending upon how you access US investments could impact on performance. But we are seeing some quite interesting times. I'd echo what people have said. People are very nervous about the upcoming budget. They are reluctant to do things until they see what was going on. I have business clients who are actually recession planning for next year rather than investing planning. Clients who are putting off buying houses because they're worried about changes to stamp duty, potentially CGT on owned properties, things like that. But the more worrying stat is the gilt market. And the gilt is how much the UK government has to pay to borrow money from investors, both in the UK and internationally. Now, on the 10-year gilt, so if we want to borrow money on a 10-year basis, we have to pay 4.8%. To put that in perspective, Greece pays 3.5% on their equivalent, in Italy 3.69%, and more worrying, the 30-year gilt. So if we want to borrow money over 30 years, currently we have to pay 5.7%, and Italy is paying 4.68%. So it is clear that the international markets have not a great deal of confidence in the UK economy. They are ignoring the Bank of England base rate because the base rate is significantly lower than those rates. And it's a balance between how the markets will react with what is announced in the upcoming budget, because you don't want something that is necessarily recessionary, but we know that taxes have to rise. So it's a very tricky period coming up in the next few months.
Very interesting. And these gilt things are sucking private investment, aren't they? Because they're tax-free if you buy a gilt.
The capital growth element on it is tax-free, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Very helpful. Let's go to Richard Peat from Helmsley Group. Now, you're in commercial, well, you're in not commercial property, but property generally. How are you feeling about it? And are you finding an appetite for investors?
Well, to be fair, it's always hard following on from Gary because he says everything I'm going to say most of the time. But investors, we're involved in commercial property, but equally we have investors who invest in the products that we offer. So on my investor side of things, very, very nervous. Investor sentiment is way down in terms of what it used to be. And, people are unfortunately sitting on their hands, waiting just to see what happens. August was effectively a complete write-off as far as I was concerned. Nothing happened. Everybody seemed to do the French way and go on holiday. And now with Rachel Reeves sort of putting the budget at the end of November, again, we've just lost this 3 months here. Then you got Christmas, so nothing's going to happen. So suddenly you're into next year before I can see any real activity starting to happen again. Again, from our client's point of view, property has been sort of rumored to be one of the sort of the easy wins for within the budget. And so again, if you wanted one word from me, it's uncertainty at the moment. And I think people are just waiting to see what happens. And, companies need things to happen to fund the cash flow to keep everybody going at the time. So it's a harder time than it has been for a number of months and years, I think, on this side of things. So I think the one, if I try and find a silver lining, maybe the bad press around Angela Rayner might mean that Rachel Reeves doesn't come up to stamp duty this time around, just in terms of the sort of the bad press side.
We'll see. All right, Richard, thank you very much. Let's move on. Two more contributions. We've got Beth and Dave. I know Dave can tend to be gloomy, so I'll leave him till last. Let's cheer ourselves up with Beth. Come on, Beth. There must be millions of people ringing you up wanting jobs. Surely employment's good.
Yeah, so in August and over the last quarter, we permanent placements and temporary billings have fallen again. However, the pace of the decline was a little softer than what we've seen in previous quarters. Vacancies have also dropped, and we are hearing and seeing lots of reports of redundancies. This has led to the steepest rise in the candidate availability since late 2020.
Yeah.
Industry-wise, construction was the only sector from the KPMG report that actually showed an increase in demand for permanent staff. The increase was small, but it was still an increase. We do see that as a positive sign. Obviously, they're at the start of the supply chain. We hope to see that have a knock-on effect across the other sectors.
Well, that's a sobering assessment. And so in terms of your own work, presumably you are going to be able to offer employers a greater choice when they advertise.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, the candidate availability is the highest that we've seen in a while, and we definitely agree with the reports that are coming out. The biggest conversations that we're having with clients at the moment is all about cost control. We are, echoing everybody else. We are hearing this uncertainty where companies are choosing to hire. They're tending to go down a more interim route than a permanent route, just due to the uncertainty with all the employment rights pending.
That's great. Thank you very much, Beth. Let's go and finally to Dave Broadbent from Baby's Trainer. You sort of do turnarounds when you can. You do company closures when necessary. What's the landscape for you?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm not going to, brighten the mood. Excuse me. It is, as everybody's been saying, we are struggling quite.
While you have a drink of water, I'll tell you how I feel about it. Give you a moment. My moment is, as I explained, but some of my clients are subdued and had to unfortunately make a small redundancy. When it comes to inflation, though, still a bit concerned. Don't want to introduce more uncertainty that would create more inflation, because I run a small firm, and actually inflation is a bit of a killer of jobs in a firm like mine. So that's my big worry. Inflation. We haven't talked about it much. I mentioned it at the top of the video, but when it comes to vote on the MPC, I think that the opportunity to cut rates was squandered earlier in the year. It should have been cut faster, harder, because now I'm not sure we'll be able to cut them. But let's see what the vote's like. Now, sorry, I just wanted to get a drink of water.
Yeah.
So give us your narrative, Dave.
Sorry about that. I'm not too sure what happened to what I've said. So yeah, I think the word that everybody's been using today is uncertainty, and that is what we are seeing at the moment from both ends of the spectrum. We've either got small businesses that are very uncertain as to what the next 3 months, 6 months are going to be for them. And at the other end of the spectrum, we've got people who have been very successful in business, but are now very concerned as to what's going to happen in the next 6 months. A lot of small businesses are turning towards doing what's known as solvent liquidations, which is basically a tax efficient way of getting the money out. They've got major concerns because obviously the rate on that is going to increase from 14% to 18% in April. And then you've got the people who are in sort of wealthy positions that they're getting clobbered left, right, and centre as well. I think we've seen our first big private school going into administration, and unfortunately, I can see a number of them following as well. So that too is gonna, I suspect, have an impact on what things are happening in the general run of it. But yeah, just to echo what people were saying, to be honest, uncertainty is the major concern, and lack of funds. We do a huge amount of stuff through the internet, so this isn't just a regional thing, it's all throughout the UK. The one thing I would say is the majority of guys that we know who base the majority of their income or referrals on their accountants, what you tend to find is the summer months are always quiet. A couple of the guys were saying earlier, I think people have just taken that decision to just clear off on holiday. They've come back now when the phone is red hot. It really is at the moment. And I know you mentioned the turnaround word earlier, but it's not, the turnaround just isn't there. It's more a question of, this thing needs to be closed. How quickly can we deal with it?
Absolutely. And it's, I was talking to a client of mine who lives abroad. He, who will remain nameless, is a tax exile, but he runs a good company in Britain, though he does it from abroad. And he was just saying, I've got 17 new members of the club. What club? He said the Expats Club, calling from Monaco. But there we are. Okay, look, I think everyone's giving opinions based on fact. They're not giving sort of political opinions. That's not the place of this this video. I'm going to go for a vote now. Before I go for a vote, I'm going to just ask Gary just a little bit of a, is there a case, is there an argument, Gary, if inflation's nearly double, well, more than double, what the target of the Bank of England is, and if you're getting indicators from groups like the food and drink people that it's going up more, is there a case for snuffing it out now by doing something completely out of kilter and putting rates up?
I don't think putting interest rates up at the moment would help because of the growth figures that were recently produced, where we have zero growth. And if
but just on the focus of inflation.
Yeah, but if you take money out of people's pockets and they're not able to spend, you will just accelerate potentially a recession or a deeper recession in 2026.
Okay.
And the markets are priced in that inflation will tick up between now and the end of the year, but will start to come down in 2026. That's already, these price rises are already factored in. So I think the Bank of England may be taking a view where it was pretty much expected there could be one more rate reduction before Christmas. It could be that might be pushed into early New Year. Yeah. But you've got to be, it's on a knife edge. And if you take money out of people's pockets, they're already not spending in hospitality, and And if interest rates go up on the mortgages and the loans, then there's less money to spend, and you're just going to accelerate that potential for a big recession next year.
Okay, right. I gave you the chance to make the case, and that's fine. Let's go for the vote. By show of hands, is there anybody who would put the rate up if they were on the MPC this week? No. By show of hands, is there anyone who would cut the rate if they were on the MPC this week? Oh, no. By show of hands, who would maintain the rate? Unanimity. I didn't expect that. It's logical. It's rational. And let's quickly canter through the reasons. Let's go. Let's give you a reason, Beth. You start us off. What's your reason?
Yeah, I would hold it where it was. With the recruitment market already slowing, demand for staff is down, more candidates are available. If we were to raise the rates now, it would risk further denting that employer confidence and make business even more cautious about hiring.
Okay. My reason was that I do want to see inflation tackled. It is a serious issue, and we've let it get away with us before, and I don't want to see that happen again. What's your reason, Carl?
I'm with you, Graham. I think we've got to get inflation under control, potentially with some inflationary measures coming out of the budget. We need to see the Chancellor show her cards before the committee takes a decision to cut.
Okay. Chancellor shows her cards first, in your view, Carl. Becky?
Yeah, we do have some members that have been asking for a cut, and I think there's a bit of campaign going on in the sort of housing sector. But the majority, and we would agree with this, that it should be maintained really to tackle inflation.
Okay. Richard, I'd half expected you to go for a cut, but you want to hold. What
No.
reason?
The inflationary worries are where I'm holding for the time being. Would like to see a drop, but yeah, it'll be early part of next year, I think, at the earliest.
Dave?
I think it's, I said it earlier, the buzzword is uncertainty. And while uncertainty is there, I don't think you can risk putting it up or down. You just have to stick with it.
Inject more uncertainty, and if you inject more money into the market. Okay. Gary?
Like I said, knife edge, and certainly putting interest rates up wouldn't. But I think it potentially do more harm than good at the moment, and reducing interest rates could be more inflationary. And we do expect inflation to go up between now and the end of the year anyway, for the reasons you've already mentioned. So holding tight for the moment, and hopefully we'll get some clarity in the coming months.
Well, that's it for our Shadow MPC today. Thank you for joining us. Let's see what the real Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee does later in the week.